people, welcome back to another video. Today I'm gonna be making a cigar pen out of this acrylic, and it is called Ocean Mist. I already pre-marked them because I forgot that I was gonna make a video on this pen, because yeah, this is my first time making a cigar pen out of acrylic, and I already have both tubes marked out onto the blank, and I started cutting into one. So yeah, alright, so let's get to it. And yeah, this one, the lines are already marked. I cut into it a little bit, but yeah. So this one's called Ocean Mist. So yeah, it's one of those like really soft acrylics, and yeah, let's get to it. So I go back to cutting it, and yeah, so first I cut off the little excess piece, and then I cut off my two actual pieces that I'm gonna be using. So I have both of my pieces here ready to go, and oh man, so yeah, see, they match up, and yeah, so and then there's a little excess piece, but yeah, it looks pretty cool. And yeah, now it's time to drill them and do everything that I need to do. So yeah, and I also, okay, so we're gonna be using a 10mm drill bit for this one, for both pieces. And then I bought this Wood River, like, I don't even know what it's called, but it helps you center the like, I don't know, like, instead of having to draw lines on it, you just use that, and it like, it's like basically like it just helps you mark them down. I'll show you right now how to use it, but yeah, so you just put it on the piece of acrylic, and oh man, this thing doesn't stay. Okay, all right, okay, all right, okay, I got it. So you just put it on there, and you, like, what I do is I do all four sides because they're not perfectly square. So I do all four sides, like I turn it to every, I mark those both lines. So now I go again and then get all of them. So I mark it basically 4 times because sometimes they're not square, how I said, and they're different. So they're like, the one side's wider, the other one's skinnier, and it's weird. So yeah, I mark it 4 times on both of them so that I make sure everything's good. And then the very center piece of where all the lines hit, that's where I will do or put the drill bit through, like the very tip of the drill bit. Since these are brad point drill bits, I'll mark it right there and just start drilling into it. And yeah, that's how I make sure everything's like centered, because there's times where I would drill stuff or the little vise wasn't set right, so then the drill bit would go in at an angle, and it wouldn't go pretty, you know what I mean? The pen would be lopsided, or I wouldn't have enough material on one side, so then the piece was really thin and it wasn't too good. So yeah, that's one thing that sucks about it. If you don't have your stuff perfectly aligned, then it can mess up every little thing. So you see how there's 4 lines on there, or 3. There's 2, like 1 thick one and 2 little ones. So yeah, so now I set up my drill bits and I start going. So with this one, I've learned that you have to go really slow, because this type of acrylic will shatter. It'll break on you fast. It's a lot more brittle than the other acrylic that I'm used to doing, but I've done a few of these types of acrylic. And now we have both holes drilled, and both holes look really good. So yeah, see, they're both clean holes. So yeah, they're good to go now. So now we get the brass tubes that go inside of them, and these aren't sanded. There's some that come sanded already, and that's a lot easier because you don't have to worry about it. So yeah, and then you got your stick fast glue. But before gluing them in, you have to sand them, make it have an abrasive surface so that the glue can grab onto the actual pen, or like the actual piece of acrylic, because if not, then it'll just like pop out. And if you don't use the right glue, or not, like if you don't let it sit for the right amount of time, the actual blank can like pop out. I've done it before where it gets stuck on the reamer, and then it sucks because you have to take it off. But yeah, so you get it both good times, give it the old 1-2, you know, and you do it to both pieces. And now you grab your crazy glue or your glue, whatever adhesive you have. This one's an AC AC glue, so acrylic. I think, I don't know what AC stands for, but it's not air conditioning, I'll tell you that. But yeah, so we got glue on there, and I always put more than what I need so that when it goes inside it gets everywhere, like all around. And if you see, whenever I put it in, I spin it so that it basically gets all over the place, so that everything has glue on it. And yeah, so a lot of those, there's times where I'll just like put it, and then like if you don't put it fast enough, they'll stick out, and then that's gonna be a problem because you're not gonna have a piece of acrylic to cover that little like piece of brass that sticks out. So yeah, and then you just put it in there and you twist it, and then I'll use the other one to push it out. So yeah, and then whenever I glue them in, I'll push it so to make sure that they're both even on both sides. And what I'll do, I have this, I don't know if it's like anybody else does this, but I'll put a little bit of like shavings on the actual thing so that I don't get stuck to it. And then I also fill in the sides, like if there's a bigger gap, I'll fill in the sides so that there's a good seal all around. And I do it to the bigger pins because the bigger ones have like, they tend to have bigger gaps, and the smaller ones don't really have that. So yeah, so I get it all the way around, and I do it on both sides because sometimes I have like a tiny little gap, so I'll fill that in with glue just to make sure that everything's good. And then yeah, put my glue away and do all that. So this is the setup of the cigar pen. So it's all black. I think it's like a metallic black or gunmetal. So that's the way it's set up. And then after that, that's just the setup of the pen without the piece of acrylic. And now it's time to put on the reamer and the cutter head. So we are going to be using a 10mm reamer, and then the cutter head is like universal for like basically all the other pins. And you grab your little Allen key and tighten it up on there. It has a little flat spot on the actual reamer so that you know where to place the cutter head, and then you tighten it up and you get to working. So it's the same thing when you drill holes. You gotta go careful and you gotta go slow, and you can't push too hard on it because then it'll shatter it, or yeah, it just won't go according to plan. But yeah, so you grab your pieces and you put them in there and make sure that they're centered, because if not, then yeah, it's not good. But you can see all that little like the particles on there that I put on there so that they won't stick, because I've done it to where like I'll glue stuff and then I forget that it's wet, or I like move my hand and I bump into it and it gets all over me. So then you go and you clean them up, and you can see that both pieces are like perfectly on there, and they're like cut down to the size that they need to be, and they're not too big. So now we use our Premier cigar pen / pencil bushings, because they also have pencils in this style of pen. So yeah, it varies on what you're gonna make. And yeah, so now you grab your bushings and you get ready to go. But with these bushings, they're different sizes. It's weird. They all look the same, but they look different. But they have like a specific spot, because if you don't put it in the right spot, then the pin's gonna look a little off. So you have to put them in the right spot that you need it to be, because if not, then you just put the pin together and then you realize it wasn't right. So you have to have like a keen eye for every little thing that you do. So now I take off, I always forget the name of this thing, but you take it off, the little gold piece on there, and you slide your bushings over. I always leave a bushing on the bottom, like at the very close to the actual mandrel, like the very back, so that it doesn't sit all the way back onto it. So I have both pieces aligned on there. I put an extra bushing, and yeah, now it's ready to go. Okay, so now you put the back piece onto it and you make sure everything's secure. If you don't like, if you wonder why you need that back piece on there, is so that it doesn't wobble. Because if you don't have that like support on the back side of it, it'll start rattling and the pen it just won't work. So now I start shaving it, and this pen's really soft, so you gotta be really careful. So each piece of acrylic has different hardness, I guess. So they're different. Basically, they're all different but the same. They have different material, or they're like one's harder, one's softer, and they'll go differently. You know what I mean? But yeah. So now I'm finally done after shaving it, and now it is time to sand it out and buff it. Usually, I'll take off the tool rest so that it's not in the way, and I'll move the little piece where the tool rest goes on over to the corner so that I have enough room to sand it down and do all that. So now it is time to sand. I have about 9, or usually I'll go with sandpaper, some rough grit sandpaper, and I'll go over it, clean it up, make sure there's no scratches or like divots in it or anything, and make sure everything's flush. Then after that, I'll go in with the sanding block. I'll use a little bit of water and I'll clean it up. And I'll take out the bigger scratches with this one. And then after that, I go in and I start using my micro mesh pads. And I use 9 different ones, and they all have different levels of, what is it called again? So they're all like, they go from like really like heavy to really fine. And then here's a close-up of the pen. And man, this pen came out so beautiful. When I first saw that piece of acrylic, I envisioned the pen as a cigar pen and with the black, and it just like, I brought it to life, you know what I mean? Like a lot of the pens, they look really good on camera or like in pictures, but in person, man, it's a lot better than what you expect. And here's a slow-mo of putting wax on it. This is the wax that I put on there so that it gives it more of a gloss and like a protective coating. When I put wax on there, I'll go from left to right, and then I'll go back again. So I'll give it around like 2-3 coats of wax, or just like 2 or 3 coats, but really thin coats of wax on there. we have what is it called? So I have my little Dremel, and I used it to buff it out. I use a little buffing wheel, and from there I clean it off, and then I'll clean it off with the rag afterward. Okay, so right here is where I use a rag, and I'll use the rag because there's sometimes excess that I didn't get with the Dremel, and yeah, so I'll go over it a few times, make sure there's no little like lumps or bumps of wax still on there. And yeah, so this is basically the same thing. I think it's easier with the rag, but I use the little Dremel just because, like, why not? And yeah, so here I get all of it. Like, usually I'll do all the pen, I'll make sure everything's good, and once that happens, well, then I take it off the lathe and I start assembling it. Okay, so right here is the final product. This is where it's all finished. All of it has been polished and buffed out. Everything's good to go, and now time to take it off the lathe. So first I loosen the back piece and the little side, and then I dust everything off, and I take off the little gold piece. Now I take off the little bushings, and piece by piece. And whenever you have like a pen like this, you make sure you have it in the correct order that you need it to go, because if not, sometimes they look alike or you don't remember which one's which, so then it's a little confusing. So yeah, and then I'll put on the other bushings back on there, because I usually leave those just like the regular bushings on there, and then like the other custom ones or the different style pins, I'll take them off and I'll put them away. Alright, so now we're good to go. I have both links here, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show it to you up close, and after that I will show you the difference between them, because they're both different sizes but they kind of look the same. So now I take off the bushings, and once I take off the bushings, I will start assembling the actual pen. And if you look at the colors, it's really pretty. It's like I don't know, it just looks like ocean, like the ocean with a little bit of green and everything. So there's that, and now it is time to assemble it. And the thing that I'm going to be using to make the pen is called a pen press, and I bought this one a while back, not too long ago. And now I have both pieces here. That's the very tip of the pen. And yeah, so you make sure everything's ready to go. So first thing is that you screw this in so that it makes it easier on the pen, and you don't have to like attach as many pieces as you need to. So now you just place that there, and there's a little opening on that side so that it won't damage the pen. And now you slide it forward, you lock it in place, and now you press on it, or there's a little lever, and you push on it until the pen is basically all the way to where it needs to be. So it sits flush, like the pen piece, like the tip of the pen and the actual acrylic sit flush together. And there you go, that's the first part done. Now is the centerpiece. So that piece goes in the middle, and you repeat the process. So now I screwed it back a little bit and put it on there. And then sometimes with this one you have to it's like basically like a screw. You just move it back or forward, and then you're good to go. So you repeat the process, and I'm gonna zoom in a little bit so that you can see where it sits flush on it. So you press it and it goes in and it sits all the way flush. So that's the front part of the pen. And right here is where my fingers are at. Right there is where the actual mechanism goes for the pen. So the first thing you want to do before putting it on is grab the pen cartridge. These are gel pens, so they write really smooth and work really good. And you put the spring on the actual cartridge so that it pushes down. It won't go out that much, but yeah. So now you grab your little mechanism, and it has threads on it so that you can screw it on there, and you're ready to go. So now for the back piece. So now you twist it, or you twist it the other way, and it pops out. So that part is done, and now time for the back piece. So for this one, you have a little piece that sits on that, and then there's a little black ring that goes there. So now you press that on there, and then also there is a back piece with a clip, and you basically repeat the process when you push it on there. And sometimes if it doesn't sit right, or if it goes in at an angle, it can break the pen. I've done it before a few times, and I was able to fix it. And then there's times where I've done it and you just can't fix it. So it sits good on there. And now time to put the very last piece on there, or pieces. You got the little clip, and then you have your little end cap piece. And this one is a little bit different because it comes with a little or you put that piece in there and you push it to where it sits flush on there. I forgot about this piece, honestly, and yeah, I forgot to say it. So that one, you put it on there, and when you do this, you want it to sit flush. You have to be really careful when pushing it. You have to know how much weight to push, or how hard to push it, so that it sits good on there. And once you do that, then you could do your final step and put on the end cap. So now you see how it's sitting flush, only the threads are showing. So you put the clip on there first, and then you grab your little end cap and you put it on there, and that's it. So now it is that's done. That's the back piece of it. Make sure it's screwed on there tight. Make sure it won't slip off. So now you grab both of your pieces and you attach them together, and now you have a very beautiful pen. And this is a cigar pen with ocean mist, acrylic, and a black just put the black on it. A black cigar pen kit. So when I first saw the piece of acrylic, I envisioned this in my head, and I basically brought it to life. I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and follow my Instagram at RickyTurner18. And there's more pens that I have made on there as well.